Hello, literature lovers. Today I am going to discuss the Well Wrought Urn studies in the structure of poetry. It's a 1947 collection of essays by Cleanth Brooks. So these are the questions that I am going to answer here and related to the work, the language of paradox in it, and the poetry discussion as a language of paradox referred, and also discussing Wordsworth's Westminster Bridge and John Donne's the very famous and my personal favorite Canonization. Now talking about the paradox, very famous literary device using the juxtaposition of incongruous ideas for the sake of striking exposition or expected insight. Now, when we talk about Cleanth Brooks, he was a new critic, he was a member of New Critical Movement and very famous. In fact, he was an American literary professor and he was known for his contribution to new criticism in mid 20th century. Now talking about the essay language of paradox, and as the title says, it emphasizes on the language of poetry and uses of signs. It's language in which the connotations play as a great a part as denotations. Now comparing it with the work of Wordsworth, this is the text you can see, and how it is a beauteous eve. The language which is talk about here is that is what we are discussing here, and how calm and free the language should be. And there is a paradox here, and which is talk about the girl is more full of worship than the speaker, precisely because she is always consumed with sympathy for nature and not as in the speaker in a tone with nature while immersed in it. This is another part of the text, the Westminster Bridge, and we can see through the reading Booth really contends that poem offers paradox not in its in detail but in the situation which the speaker creates. Now talking about Canonization by John Donne, how here the language point applies is being discussed. Donne's Canonization, you can see, and it ends his essay with the reading of John Donne's poem Canonization using a paradox as its metaphor, and there is a religious aspect related to it, and physical love as saintly. This is something when I first read Canonization really shocked me. How can a physical love be so saintly? It's really the beauty of the work by Donne, and you can praise it. And here we can see the secondary paradoxes related to it, and similar was also in Romeo and Juliet. The saintly love is there, the hands and palms being kissed. This is a text, you can talk about it while there. This work is by Rachna Joshi, and the work is poem is Leaving India, and you have some mark related to it. Thus, to conclude, we may say the language of paradox, that is the poetry collection, the Well Wrought Urn, Brooks shows that paradox was so essential to poetic meaning. The paradox was almost radical to poetry. And thus we can summarize the criticism views related to it by R.S. Crane, another very famous critic, and he used the formula of, he really talked Brooks as the modern Einstein, E is equals to mc square, which is profound paradox that the matter and sign energy are the same thing, and the argument of the centrality of paradox and irony becomes a reductio and absurdum, and therefore void for literary analysis. I hope you must have got an overall idea. Thanks for listening.